Hi team, welcome to the Carb-Appropriate Podcast, where I talk to inspiring people in health, fitness, nutrition, business, and the creative arts who are doing interesting things to improve performance and maximize human potential. Today I'm speaking to Scott Gooding, celebrity cook, personal trainer, all-round health and wellness guy. I originally met Scott through a ketone speaking tour I guess I was doing in Aussie with Tony Freeman, and Scotty was our celebrity MC for the Sydney event. We met and I thought, who the hell is this guy? We got on, and I don't exactly know how things progressed from there, but I ended up writing the foreword for your latest book, and we ended up doing a bunch of things together, and now we've collaborated on your new program, Recondition Me. So welcome, Scotty. It's good to have you on, mate.
Yeah, it's very good to be on. Thanks for having me. That's quite an intro for your podcast. I hope I fit the bill.
Of course. The cool thing is I know so many great people like yourself that I just basically call up my mates and say, hey, do you want to be on a podcast?
Yeah. Do you want to work with me on a new website?
Exactly. That's how it works though, right?
Well, yeah, I think, it kind of takes, it's a bit of an old adage, but it rings so true that it takes a village to make a difference, and this is something that Dr. Terry Walls mentioned to me a couple of months ago, is that it literally takes a village to instill a health epidemic, which I quite like that term that she used, the health epidemic. And so it takes me, you, and thousands and countless other people to kind of promote a healthy message. And I love what you do over there, and you have a great voice there, and you have a growing and respected voice in Australia. So it's a privilege to know you.
Cheers, Scotty. So you mentioned Terry Walls, and I will backtrack a little bit and get your bit more about your background and stuff in just a tick. But I mean, that's a pretty big deal. Terry Walls is a very well-known expert in the field of autoimmune conditions and MS and all sorts. So what was going on there?
Yeah, I do like to name drop, by the way. So that's just the start of a few. Yeah, she came out last month and did a couple of well, she actually had a pretty grueling schedule, but there were two sort of live events that she did, one in Melbourne, one in Sydney, and I guess it was to present her ethos and her philosophy and her findings around real food being the solution to autoimmune condition. She was diagnosed maybe 12 years ago with MS and went on this sort of very rapid decline in health. She ended up being, or going from, a black belt in Taekwondo to being in a wheelchair and being pretty incapacitated. And so she went on this path of finding out the specific minerals that she was deficient in that were common in her condition and other sort of autoimmune conditions. And so started to supplement with those minerals, and then took it to another level in that she was like, well, surely I can find those minerals in real food. And so she started mapping out this kind of real food protocol that plugged all the holes that needed plugging. And sure enough, not overnight, but over weeks and months and certainly years, like her health transformed. And now she's in this beautiful, privileged position to kind of go around the world talking about her findings. So she's a doctor of nutrition. And I was lucky enough to be on stage with her for her gig in Melbourne and Sydney. And to me, that was a real privilege. I remember watching her TED talk that she did, that I found very inspiring, like years ago. I watched that maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And so to be on stage with her, to meet her first and foremost, was a privilege. And then obviously to share time with her on stage was great.
Yeah, it's interesting because there are people like Terry and like, Peter Attia and all these people who really, I mean, they're self-experimenters, right? And a lot of times because of that, people in academia will kind of look down on them and say, well, they're not doing real research. They're just playing around with ideas for themselves. But Terry Wall's protocol has been influential for so many practitioners, and there's no doubt that it's led a lot of people to do further research. It's led a lot of practitioners to really change what they're doing in their protocols, and it's helped, I don't know, thousands, millions of people.
Mm-hmm. But the interesting thing is, if she had not the credentials that she does, she would have got a lot more flack than she currently does. So she was actually, I don't know what the correct term is, but the MS Society kind of shunned her. They were like, what you're advising and advocating is contentious, it's dangerous. And so she was barred from the MS Society. So
wow.
The very condition that she's trying to support and provide a solution for so many thousands of people across the world have actually barred her. They have since sort of retracted that a little, and they actually let her present. They gave her a 5-minute slot at their most recent sort of annual convention thing. I don't know.
Hey, Scotty, that's your 5 minutes up, mate.
Oh, is it?
We're done now. I'll see you later.
All right. Well, it's good to talk about Terry Walls. Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, they gave her 5 minutes, and even during that 5 minutes, she was telling me that the Q&A after, she was sort of bombarded with this line of questioning that was very sort of lots of scrutiny. What you're doing is dangerous. This could lead to sort of harming families, could lead to suicide. Just really alarmist kind of reactions to what is essentially an eating plan that I adhere to, you adhere to. Like, it's just real food. It's not wild. It's not it's not outside the box. It's just very sort of in line with paleo or primal, whatever the tagline is. But essentially it's just embracing veggies, eating some offal if that's your choice, and some good quality protein. And so it's just, so I guess my point was, or is, that it surprises me that someone gets so much flack, and Pete Evans is in this barrow too. But if she didn't have the credentials that she does, i.e. A researcher and a doctor in nutrition, she'd probably be not where she is today. Do you know what I mean? In terms of like public reaction, or industry reaction.
And I think it's interesting because people conflate.
What does that mean?
What is different to? That's right, mate. People conflate what's different to current practice with truly alternative or quackery. And I would say in some respects, or in some cases, people are justified in doing that if you're talking about a David Wolf or someone like that, who I believe literally says some things that are dangerous, right? As compared to someone like Terry Walls, who is a practitioner and researcher and is, as you say, telling people to eat a diet based on a compendium of natural unprocessed food. I mean, every bit of literature, every bit of evidence tells us that that's the most appropriate thing to do anyway. So there's no conflict there, but people create a conflict because it's not whatever. It's not standard, best care, best practice, which may not be evidence-based anyway.
Yeah, I'm bemused by that kind of dialogue and narrative, to be honest. And I think it stems from practitioners adhering to current guidelines that sort of fit that food pyramid. And so anything that comes that opposes that, or flips that, or attempts to flip that on its head and suggests that maybe we shouldn't be having such an abundance of grains and cereals and that type of foods, high carbohydrates, and maybe we should be embracing fats, and in particular those fats that have been demonized since the 50s. So I think it comes from that kind of practitioners, clinicians sort of really holding on tight to those current guidelines, and so if someone comes in and opposes that, then it kind of undermines what they've been doing, or what they are doing, and what they have been doing for their whole professional career.
Yeah.
But I think it's prudent to sort of, take a step back if that's your stance and you're following you're adhering to the current guidelines, and that's the prescription. Then maybe it's time to kind of take a step back and look at the bigger picture, I think.
Yeah, I mean, constantly reevaluate, right?
Yeah, I mean, otherwise you're a piece of granite. Like you've got to constantly read and
Mate, I am a piece of granite.
You're fucking huge.
So, Scotty, that's an interesting line of thinking, because you came from a cardio and carbs background, right?
Mm.
And then sort of moved into the cooking, gained some sort of notoriety around that, and moved through sort of paleo into probably sort of paleo keto. How did that journey kind of work out for you?
Yeah, I mean, years ago, I used to. I get asked this type of question quite a bit, and
I'm sorry.
No, I haven't actually been asked it in that way, but I guess I've always tried to eat healthy with the information that I've had at the time.
Yep.
So I can look back and go, wow, you were kind of way off back then compared to what I know now. But at the time, I was like, well, this is what's healthy for me. So yeah, going back early 2000s up until 2007, I think, or 2005, I used to be a runner. I used to train like indiscriminately. So running, biking, swimming, not much strength stuff at all. I probably it was this strive to be the fittest man on the planet. But at the consequence of my health. So I slowly was driving myself into the ground, and then my back gave way, and I ruptured discs in 2005. And then for the next 7 years, I was on this kind of fucking, hamster's wheel of pain, inflammation, frustration, mood disruption, depression. It was a pretty ugly cycle, and I'd sort of checked out of life. Like it wasn't fun anymore. You'd walk into a room and you'd scan the room and check out what seating there were. Was it bench seating? Did it have a back to before you've even said hello to the guy that you're going to meet? Like you just your life is kind of your back kind of in your pain occupies your life and your world.
Yeah.
So in that 7 years, I thought the path to fix my back and to get my life back was through a mechanistic process. So massage, acupuncture, manipulation. I saw every modality possible until at the end of the 7 years, I was like, fuck, there's nothing that's going to fix me. And I kind of had enough at that point. So I started to think, well, there's got to be more to this picture than what is currently, or the through the lens that I'm looking at. So I started to read around nutrition and food and how food can be anti-inflammatory or pro-inflammatory, and that kind of led me onto the path of paleo, and so slowly over time, I believe my systemic inflammation, helped my back condition, and so I started to get, the pockets where my back was pain-free started to elongate, and the periods of which I was in aggravation and inflamed started to recede, and slowly they started to join up. And so over months and certainly years, I regained mobility and I'm pain-free, and now I don't even associate myself as being a victim of back pain, and I seriously believe a great deal of that has come through nutrition, and obviously training in a smart and effective way, but a large part of that is nutrition, I believe.
Yeah. So did the food for you and cooking in particular, did that come as a result of that process, or had you already done some training in cooking or in sort of the culinary arts or anything like that?
No, I guess the cooking, my mum and dad ran pubs in London for like 40 years.
All right.
So there were always busy kitchens, invariably that busy that if I wanted something to eat for lunch or dinner, I would have to jump in and make it myself. So I think by almost osmosis and getting in and getting your hands dirty, I sort of learned these very basic skills and the basics around understanding flavor and what herbs and spices go together and the such, and how to make a very basic stew or casserole. And then I guess it collided around the same time at the end of that 7-year period where I did start to look at food as being medicinal and potentially helping my back. You kind of realize that if you keep eating out, whether it be at a restaurant or a cafe, you're compromising your health. And the only way that you can be an absolute custodian of your own health is to cook at home, because you know explicitly what's in that dish, from the herb to the spice to the broth to the meat to the whatever. You know, you can dissect that dish and you can stand by every ingredient. So I guess it started at that point. I started to cook more at home. I started to embrace, anti-inflammatory foods and sort of limit the pro-inflammatory foods. And it made a massive difference over weeks and months.
And so what then caused the leap to go into tele and to, write your books? Were other people saying, dude, you're a pretty awesome cook? Or was that just something where you said, fuck it, I'm going to give it a crack?
A bit of column A and column B. So I realized as a PT, so 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, I was a PT in Bondi. And I'm doing okay. Like I've got some boot camps happening and everything's cool. But I realized that there's a ceiling or a limit, shall we say, as to how far and wide you can spread your message. And so I was like, well, how do I remember, I don't know whether you guys are familiar with Michelle Bridges over there, but Michelle Bridges has this sort of online program, 12 WBT. And I was like, I want something like that, something that can get into the homes of thousands of Australians or New Zealanders that will help them. I can't see all these people in the park. It just doesn't work like that. How can you spread your message around exercise and nutrition as efficiently as possible? So, I mean, I don't know how much of this stuff you need to know, but I went on down this path of getting a PR company, and there was like, there's no real guarantees of success with that sort of stuff. It's all a bit beige and there's lots of uncertainty. And she was like, we can get you in magazines, we can get you on TV. And looking back now, there's no fucking way they would have been able to do that. I was just like I still am a no one, but back then I was even more of a no one. And then, the opportunity came to go on My Kitchen Rules. And so I was like, well, this is an unreal opportunity to showcase to Australia and whoever else wants to listen that healthy food can be exciting and it can be delicious. I think for a long time, and I don't know where it stemmed from, there's this sort of association to healthy food being a bit bland and a bit tasteless. Yeah. Conjures up images of mung beans and alfalfa sprouts. But, I'm sure I know the foods that you eat and I know the foods that I eat tick both the health box and the taste box. You know what I mean? Like there's no sense in making healthy food if it tastes like, if it doesn't excite you and it doesn't entice you into the kitchen. There's that you'll fall off the wagon so quickly. You have to, this is I was talking about this yesterday. Like that's as big a missing piece of the puzzle as we can choose to mention. we all know that we should eat more veggies. We all know that we should eat good quality protein and fish. But if you don't treat it in the manner that it deserves to be treated, if you don't make it exciting and sexy and delicious, then you've kind of missed the opportunity. Because, you know, take a bowl of blanched veggies, for example. If you present that to your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your kids, like, they're not going to get through it. Their eyes aren't going to light up. But if it's the treatment, so if you cook in fat, add fat to them, bit of salt, squeeze a lemon, tahini dressing, salsa verde, chimichurri, there's all these really simple, effective, affordable ways to make real food taste amazing. And I think that's a huge missing piece of the puzzle. I think knowing that a squeeze of lemon or a dash of salt, simple as that, will lift the dish, and so help you adhere to eating real food and adhere to eating healthy food.
Exactly. I mean, one of the things that it still baffles me is this idea that comes through, and particularly in the bodybuilding circles, of, you know, food is not there for your entertainment, it's there as fuel. And I think that's crazy, because of course it's fuel, but it's also one of our biggest enjoyments. It's our biggest entertainment, probably. I mean, for me, I think about my next meal constantly because I love eating.
Yeah. When I finish a meal, I'm spewing because I know I've got to wait until, you know, like it's in our DNA to cook and celebrate that, you know, with friends and loved ones. And we've kind of lost that connection. Yeah. We're in this age of convenience and packaged and processed food. And a lot of what I talk about is building that bridge to reconnect us to how our, you know, previous generations would have celebrated cooking and food. Yeah. And I talk about this, it's going to sound weird, but I talk about working your kitchen muscle. So many of us, as a consequence of the last few decades, haven't inherited the cooking skills that our mum and dad or granddad might have given us. So we consider the kitchen, we have this attachment to the kitchen being where we make fuck ups and disasters, or we don't know what we're doing. We don't know how to make something quite basic. So, but that's a narrative that you've attached to the kitchen, but you can unlearn that and attach a positive affirmation to getting back in the kitchen. And that just requires, like any new skill, a bit of discipline and a bit of patience and, just getting your hands dirty. Like, start with something basic, do that again, do that again, do that again. It's a bit repetitious. Like, don't try and be a, you know, Michelin star chef straight away. Like, start with the basics. But it's about breaking down that fear and resistance that people have to cooking in the kitchen.
Yeah.
You know, there's a poster up of a U in my kitchen, and that entices me in there, you know.
I thought you said a you, and I thought you were speaking to the New Zealand audience, you know, a female sheep. I was thinking, well, that's interesting.
I wouldn't be so rude.
Yeah, it's you make a good point, because I think people are going to assume from the outset, if they haven't done a lot of cooking, and I don't make any claims to be a great cook, but they're going to have this baseline where they think it's going to be really complicated, and it has to be complicated in order to be enjoyable. But at the end of the day, you know, there's not much better than a piece of well-seared meat seasoned with salt. You know, there's very simple things that are so satisfying, comforting, satiating, all the things we really want. And if people can learn just some simple techniques, it makes everything flow.
Yeah, I think it's the same rules apply, or the same strategy applies to when you're learning anything new. Like, just do it and do it again and get that positive feedback. You know, there might be a time where you stuff it up royally and it all has to go in the bin. But I would argue that's that those moments that are pretty few and far between.
I eat it anyway. I make myself. I like nothing goes to waste.
Yeah, but I think it's an important reminder that we're not all supposed to be good at everything. And I think if you've labeled, this is an important thing. It's about labeling. And I think if so many people, and I only say this because I've had the privilege to go around Australia, whether it's the cities or regional Australia, and I hear time and time again that I can't cook, or I'm a shit cook, or, you know, whatever I cook is disastrous, or I don't know what to cook. And these are all just labels. And so working your kitchen muscle is just essentially getting in, be prepared to get your hands dirty, bit of planning, bit of preparation, and there's tricks and tools to make that a smoother process. Like, if you need something to get you excited about being in the kitchen, then maybe get a new chopping board or some new knives, or, you know, poster of Cliff Harvey up on the wall. Do whatever it takes to get you excited about being in the place that is going to be the lever to help us out of this health epidemic, because we all know that we should be eating better.
Yeah.
But it's got to start from home. Like, it's got to be home cooked food, because every time you outsource your food, whether it's the 7-Eleven or the local cafe around the corner, or Deliveroo or Uber Eats, you're relinquishing control of your health. That restaurant on the corner, that cafe, that 7-Eleven, they don't, with the exception of a few brands and companies, they don't give a shit about your health. They want to make money, and they hopefully want to produce a good product or service, but your health isn't top of their priority, but it should be the top of your priority. So cooking with love at home, with real food, with respect, I believe is the lever to help us out of this health epidemic.
So I guess that was the motivation behind the books, right? You've written, what, 8 books or something?
Yes, 8. The 8th one's out later this year.
Okay, so the earlier ones were making paleo, you know, paleo primal style cooking and eating simple, right?
Yeah. And look, I co-wrote them with another guy, and look, we didn't hit the mark every time. And I can't even look at those books anymore. Like, you know, I've seen them so many times, and there's so many recipes in there that I'm like, oh. But that being said, at that time, at that moment in time, I think, you know, paleo was growing, and people were sort of confused as to what that was. So hopefully, in some small way, I contributed to giving people variety and choice around cooking with real food, and sort of adhering to a paleo protocol.
Well, that's testament to evolution, right? I remember my mentor, Dr. Ian Brooks. He was New Zealand's biggest selling business author. He told me that if you're not embarrassed by your books several years later, you haven't grown. So, you know, I look back at my earlier books and just, I mean, I wanted to take them out of print, because I've moved on a lot, and there's so much there that just seems naive now.
Yeah, but I think, you know, that extends. So a book is reflective, or represents your thoughts and feelings at that moment in time. Yeah. And so when you learn new stuff and evolve over, you know, so your talks, your presentations would have evolved over months and years. But that's kind of what I'm trying to say is, a book is kind of set in stone. It's there for all to see. And I think, I think there needs to be some sort of empathy and compassion for yourself at that time. It's like, well, this is the knowledge that I had at the time, and I thought that it was the best prescription at the time. But if you don't evolve through study and research and listening, and then you're a piece of granite, and I know you are, but you're still evolved, so you kind of don't. You're kind of an outlier there.
Yeah. So you moved on from there to write the your book. What sort of led you? You moved on from that series, and then doing a bunch, more work, and then ended up doing a ketogenic diet book just recently.
Yeah.
What took you from? And I'm not going to pigeonhole you and say you're a keto guy, because I know more than that. I know you're not just a keto guy, but what led you from that sort of paleo primal lifestyle into looking more into keto?
I guess really understanding the paleo diet. Like I'll, and you might argue the toss here, but I think when you're looking at a purist ancestral diet, for most parts of the year, with the exception of particular regions and particular seasons, most of our ancestors would have experienced a high-fat diet.
Yep.
Do you agree?
Yeah, well, I'd say on balance, it was very common for people to be in and out of ketosis, and they would have gone long periods of time being very low carb. And obviously there's massive regional variation in that, and that's really the biggest thing. Latitude pretty much defines carb intake anthropologically. But it's fair to say, and I've made this point, as you know, time and time again in lectures, is that basically every hunter-gatherer population that's ever been studied eats less carbohydrate than the modern dietary prescription.
Yeah. So going back to the books, I now look at those books, and I guess this sort of happened prior to my latest book, The Keto Diet. I started to look at some of those recipes, and although they've ticked a few boxes, i.e., real food and eat the rainbow, and but some of them are still kind of carb heavy, so lots of sweet potato. So I think I just thought that there's more to be refined, and I think that's kind of what led me to the keto diet.
And so you said earlier on that lots of people, and you looked at some of the programs that were out there that were serving lots of people, I guess. And now you're doing that, right? You've launched Recondition Me.
Mm-hmm.
So tell, because I know a little bit about it. I've been involved just a little bit, but tell everyone out there what Recondition Me is.
Well, I guess top line, it's an 8-week online health program. So it's got everything that you'd probably expect from an online program, in that it's got workouts and meal plans. It's got some mindfulness coaching, but it's also got a psychologist who talks about mindset. So unlearning negative patterns of behavior and association around food and exercise and health. And obviously it's got yourself, who, describes the why and digs a little bit deeper around nutrition. But to me, I mean, that's a huge piece of the puzzle, the nutrition component, not just giving meal plans and recipes that people can customize. Like, that's a piece of it, obviously, but you've got to understand the mechanism. You've got to understand the why behind that sits behind that, because essentially I want people to join up and then go on this journey. At the end of their 8 weeks, they pop out the other side and they know intuitively what to eat, how to cook. Like, they're not having to jump on someone else's program or protocol. So you've got to provide people with the why and the how, and you're the why. You break down what's important in a very simplistic way, and I provide the recipes in my mind that kind of just sit over the top of your message. But the reason and potentially why my program sits there's a few programs that probably from an untrained eye look the same. But the reason, my point of difference is that there's a strong focus on mindset. Now, I can't talk about mindset. I'm not a psychologist. I have a sort of very brief, not brief, but I have a very small kind of insight as to mindset. I was a PT for 15 years. I've seen and heard lots of excuses about why I can't do this and why I can't do that. I've seen clients be on this sort of circular treadmill, never really getting anywhere, have glimpses of success, and then circle back around and present with the same obstacles or resistances to adhering to a healthy lifestyle. So to me, that's as big a part of the picture as the nutrition or the workouts. So I'm not in a position to talk about psychology, so hence why I've got Glenn McIntosh, who that's his bread and butter. That's what he talks about day in, day out. And it's really kind of giving people the tools to make informed choices and unlearning patterns of behavior that are keeping them in a holding pattern. So again, sort of over a decade of seeing clients and friends and family sort of never really adhering long term, like to the point where it's habitual, to the point where intuitively what to eat, what to shop for, how to cook, when to train, how to train. And so I hope, and I'd like to think, that Recondition Me is in many ways providing a solution for that. It's got the why behind nutrition, it's got the how behind nutrition, but it's also breaking down those barriers that people have, the associations with food, the self-esteem, with the mindfulness component. We talk about self-love and compassion and all those types of topics, because adhering to a healthy lifestyle, before it becomes habitual, there's lots of obstacles, there's lots of resistances that we've had for 5, 10, 15, 20, all our life. And so that takes a lot of hard work, lots of unlearning something is as hard as learning something. So harder, yeah. And so it's been a long time coming. This is something that's been in my head for the last 5 years. And arguably over those 5 years, I've been in some way frustrated that it hasn't happened sooner. But you know what? Like, I'm so proud of it coming out now, because had I done it 12 months ago, you wouldn't have been on it. Glenn might not have been on it. I might not have met Nira, who's the mindfulness coach. So things happen for a reason. And now, I've got these amazing program with these fantastic contributors who are all experts in their field. And ultimately, it's going to provide that solution for so many Australians and New Zealanders and whoever else.
And I think that's, the concepts of integration in health, I think, are often paid lip service to, and I think that's something you've done really well, is to start with a function of integration, right? So you've got the good nutritional advice behind it. You've got Glenn and Nira, you've covered off all those bases. And even within the people in the team, from what I've seen, there is that symbiosis of theory into application, but that's also encapsulated with caring. And the reason I say that is you mentioned the word intuitive a lot, becoming intuitive with what you're doing. And I guess what we're really saying there is that becomes your natural state of being. And I think now there's a bit of a dichotomy, because some people look at that and they elevate that without necessarily being fully aware of the fact that people do need to actually still do something You know, they still need to make changes. They need to actually have the tools there to make the changes, as well as having the mindfulness and all the empowering aspects around it. On the other hand, some people just say, oh, well, you know, you just give someone a diet and they've just got to stick to it and exercise their willpower and they'll be fine. And of course, we know that doesn't work. So where's that caring middle ground where you can basically, you know, practice the compassion and work with someone, help to empower them through nourishment and challenge, but also through that challenge say, hey, you got to do something, you know, we actually do need to move. We do need to take that little bit of extra time to prepare something, but that becomes habitual and it's fine. And I think the biggest thing is, like you say, mindset. I think if you can shift your mindset from thinking, I need to beat myself up with exercise to be smaller, and I need to starve myself with food or with lack of food to be smaller, to a situation of I need to nourish myself to feel amazing and want to move, and then challenge myself with interesting exercise, you know, that they're poles apart in terms of the mindset.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's reflective of the times we live. Like, people want a quick fix and a quick solution, but it's not going to happen. Like, I consider myself pretty healthy, but that's come of years of sort of trial and error and testing, you know, treating myself as a case study and reading, and but also a long history of training and sort of having a certain level of respect for my health. But for many people, it might seem alarmist or confronting or elitist to live a healthy life, which is why, circling back around to Recondition Me, it's like, here are as many tools as I can currently find for you to make the changes. There's no sense. I mean, you look at the workouts that I've prescribed. I would like to think that because broadly speaking, you know, it's nutrition that's the lever to health. It's not fitness. So there's not a huge focus on the workouts. I only prescribe three a week. But I'm not going to bust your balls. I'm not going to. There's stuff that hopefully we can all do. Obviously, there's varying intensities, but I want you to do this. I don't want to put you off. Is the thing. If you're new to exercise, so I talk about Debbie from Dubbo. So there's this fictional woman who lives in Dubbo. She's got 2 kids. She's in her late 30s. She hasn't got access to fancy gym equipment. She doesn't really know much about health and nutrition, but she wants to make good. She wants to, you know, she's just starting to wake up with aches and pains, and she's put on a few pounds. So she wants to have a bit of a health transformation for her and her family. Debbie Googles best diet or best workout for weight loss. But can you imagine the contrasting and conflicting information that she'll be presented with? Like, that's a fucking minefield. Yeah. So for me, I don't want to prescribe Debbie a workout plan that she's going to do 1 or 2 sessions or 2 weeks at best and go, fuck, I'm out. That's way too hard. I'm sore all over. Equally, I don't want to prescribe a diet and an eating plan that is calorie restrictive, tastes like shit. You're eating for energy. You're not eating for enjoyment, because you're going to fall off that too. So you want to make food that tastes and look good. You want to make exercise to be, you know, I think play should be a huge part of exercise. Like, if you can find a sweet spot between enjoyment and having enough stimulus to kind of induce some sort of a positive effect, then that's the money.
So it typically grows, right? It's like we've talked about with meditation. You know, I remember I think it was on your podcast, we talked a little bit about meditation, and I told you about my sort of 1 minute meditation.
Yeah.
that grows to 2 minutes, that grows to 3 minutes, that grows to 10 minutes to 20 minutes over time. And it feels like that the person doesn't feel any real difference between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to that. Doing that consistently every day, they're growing into the habit of doing it. Just like if my adrenal, what people call adrenal fatigue, I don't really agree with that term, but my fatigue clients, I might start them off doing 1 push-up, 1 squat.
Mm.
And the next day they'll do 2 push-ups, 2 squats. Before they know it, they're back to full physical fitness again.
Yeah. So this is a beautiful case in point. When we met for that podcast, I don't know when that was, a year ago, maybe a year and a half, we talked about mindfulness and meditation. And up till then, so 41 years of hearing about meditation, friends who meditate regularly, knowing that it would help me in many ways, but I just had this block. I just had this resistance. No, I can't quieten my mind. I don't have time. But I find time. I talked about this on the day. I find time to train. I find time to shop for good food and cook and spend time with friends and family. I can find time for that, but I can't find time to meditate. It's ludicrous. So you suggested that I meditate for 1 minute a day. And we joked.
It almost sounds ridiculous, right?
Yeah, but we joked about it. But I think it was that night. I remember I was in a hotel room in I can't remember where I was, but I just sat in the chair in the hotel room and was like, I put my timer on, and I thought, well, I reckon I could do 1 minute. So I sat there, knocked out 1 minute, and just as you suggested, every day just added a minute, and soon enough you're doing 10, you're doing 15, and the very act of doing that every day, at some point it becomes part of your regime. It becomes part of, I don't even like that word regime because it kind of suggests that it's, I don't know, but it becomes habitual is what I'm trying to say. And now it's just part of my landscape. And now the beautiful thing is that I've learned that from you, and I'm sharing that with my audience.
That's awesome. So you mentioned sort of regime, you don't like that word, but I really like the idea of morning routines, for example. I use those a lot with my clients. I'm a big fan of my own morning routine. Do you have something or a set of things that you do each and every day?
Yeah, I do. I wake up. I'm lucky enough.
That's a good start.
yeah.
Wake up every day.
Yeah. If I wake up, I'll high five myself. I'm lucky enough, and this certainly wasn't the case for many years because I had to get up to a very early alarm. But I'm lucky enough at the moment that I don't set an alarm, so I wake up naturally. I'll have a shower. I'll grab a coffee. So I'll walk down to my local coffee shop, grab a coffee, and then I'll train. After training, I'll have a steam, then I'll come back and have some food. But that to me is like, if I can start my morning with some form of exercise, and that's not the case every day. So 4 or 5 days a week I'll train, and there's certainly 2 or 3 days that I'll embrace the days off. But I do like to have a steam or a sauna, and I've been doing that for the best part of 20 years, I reckon, either a steam or a sauna. And a big part of that is quiet time.
Yeah.
So let me tell you, an iPhone doesn't work very well in environments, a steam or a sauna. And so, that when I'm walking into a steam or a sauna, I've trained, I've had a coffee. So, I'm buzzing. So it's a time to kind of think about the day. So I can either, depending on my mood and depending on my to-do list, I can either use it as a time to quieten the mind and just sit still, or I can use it as a moment to go, right, what are the things that I need to get done today? And so kind of to be a thought-provoking 20 minutes or 15 minutes.
Yeah. So what are some of your go-to resources for health or fitness, nutrition? Are there particular people you follow, or are there some books that really influence you?
Outside of you mean?
Well, just plug my books and then we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, obviously you are, all jokes apart, all jokes aside, you are, an influence in my messaging. Because I don't want to pump up your tires too much here, but it's the attitude that you have as well as the key message points. And I think the same can be said for Mark Sisson. I like his attitude. It's not dogmatic. It's not black and white. I think the moment it becomes dogmatic, you run the risk of polarizing people. And I think once you've polarized them, you've kind of lost them. So there needs to be a little bit of compassion. There needs to be a little bit of empathy for the end user that you're trying to communicate to. It has to be this way. It has to be done. Like, you're going to lose people. And so if the aim is to positively influence as many people as you can through health, then it has to be delivered with compassion.
Exactly.
For example, like I put a post up this morning of a smoothie, and I listed the ingredients. And one person jumped on and said, that's all very well and good, but all those ingredients are super expensive and probably for the privileged. What about the people in the poorer areas? Which is a really good point.
But
it was a good reminder for me that those are the types of people who I do want to influence. And there's lots of other factors at play. You can't just say that it's a money thing, an economic thing. There's lots of other variables at play. But it was a good reminder for me that message that you're sharing needs to embrace everyone from all walks of life. And so, there's players in our field that do have a dogmatic approach, and that fosters a almost like disciple-like following. Which is, that's, I don't know, that's a whole another topic of conversation. Probably it's probably.
I think in some respects it's almost easier. You create, and we know those people. You create a cult of personality or a cult of brand, and that leads to people being very zealous for what you're saying. But it's limited. It's very limited because you can't then be pragmatic. As soon as you're dogmatic, you can't be pragmatic, and you're going to be a hypocrite. Full stop. Because at some point you're going to be shown up. And I think that's where I've always wanted to. You said it. I was going to say exactly the word that you said. It comes down to compassion. Because I think if you're compassionate and you can understand that people are walking different paths and they're fighting their own battles, you can't have a one-size-fits-all prescription, and you can't say that what works for me is going to work for everybody, or I know best, because at the end of the day, you only really know best for you. And, you and I are still evolving. People say, oh, you know a lot about nutrition, and I do, but I still haven't figured it out for myself yet. 100%. I'm still trying things out, and I've still got health challenges. I still work with things. I was actually going to say that's really interesting. You're talking about the movement in the morning. We've got a new sort of routine of going for a long walk every morning. And I've never really done that because it's always been my pattern to get up, do some stretches, do some meditation, and start my riding. Whereas now we're going for a long walk, Bella and my dog and I. And the change in my mental health has been profound because, as you know, I have bipolar disorder, and I get pretty down, and it's been seriously like night and day.
Yeah, right.
And so that's just an example of, you have things pretty well figured out, but no one's got it completely figured out. You keep evolving, you keep learning and growing.
Yeah. Look, I've evolved in terms of my delivery over the last few years. When I on the back of those books and the back of the show, I guess I was so entrenched in paleo, and I was so passionate about getting that message out there that I can recall presentations I was doing and talks I was doing, and it was kind of, no, it's this way or the highway.
Yeah.
Like, if you choose to eat these foods over here, then expect the consequences, kind of thing. And I didn't like myself saying it. I could kind of hear myself saying it. And I've just softened over the last 4 or 5 years, or probably last 3 years. And for the betterment of my brand, probably. You don't know, like, exactly right. Like, you know for you, but you don't know for Joe Blow on the street. You don't know what their thought process is. You don't know their physiology. So to say you must work out like this, you must eat this, is a bit, it lacks compassion and empathy.
I saw that comment actually on your Instagram post, and I, like you, thought that was really interesting because it was a good call to action, I thought, to remember that there are people out there who can't afford those ingredients and things. By the same token, I think it's interesting for another reason that
I blocked her, by the way.
Did you?
No.
It was also interesting because it's a good example of, and I thought that person was well-meaning, and that you're obviously
totally.
So that's all good. It's also interesting though when, not in that instance, but sometimes people will seize on the one thing they see, and they'll think that's what you're all about. And I've had exactly the same thing. If I post about Lion's Mane coffee, and I'll get a message saying, "How can you post about that? People can't afford it."
Right.
It's like, well, that's not actually the point, because people are going to benefit from it. I like it, so I'm going to post about it. What they're not seeing is, or not paying attention to, is all the other work that you might do, right? And I know that you do work with charity groups, and you do a lot of work with the community and things like that, as have I in, my entire career. It's very easy for people to be hypersensitive to the things that trigger them, and then try and pull you down based on that.
I'm very lucky that I don't get much of that, and I don't know why or how that's the case, but touch wood, that doesn't change. But it does affect me. Like, if someone thinks that I'm promoting like for the health elite, then that's not what I'm about.
Yeah.
To me and to you, I'm sure you end up being this conduit of information, and some of that information is real grassroots and accessible for the masses. Some of it's like Lion's Mane is a bit sort of biohacky and potentially not affordable for the masses. But you're just a conduit. You're just a sharer of information. Take what you can, if it works for you, and stick with it. If it doesn't, let it go. But to sort of focus only on grassroots stuff or only on biohacking, like, you're losing, or you're not doing yourself justice, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why you don't get a lot of criticism in that respect, because I know that
it's because I'm massive and I've got tattoos. I think that's the case.
Exactly. You got a funny accent. People don't know what's going on there. They're worried that if they say anything, you might fall over and flop around on the floor for a while. It's funny though, because I think the pragmatism actually deflects a lot of potential criticism, because people want to get in a stoush, right? They want to get in a fight online, and they want to have a good set too. But if you're actually listening to people, I had a post on my Facebook page a week or so ago that got a lot of attention. Some really interesting debate went on, and I found it really interesting because I wanted to hear what people had to say, right? I wanted to hear the criticisms, and I wanted to be challenged, because that's the way you grow and become better. And I learned some really good lessons from that, and it helps to make you more compassionate, right? But as soon as you take that approach where you're actually listening to people and saying, "Hey, that's a really good point. I'm going to consider that, then it diffuses them straight away because they're like, oh, fuck, I wanted to fight this guy.
Yeah. I mean, I did get one the other day, and it said, you have fangs, you must be a vampire. And to that, I just wrote, thanks for your input.
That's a weird comment.
Yeah, I was smiling in some photo. You've got fangs, you must be a vampire. That's a different type of thing. But yeah, I guess there was option A, option B to this lady's comment this morning, and I chose a response that serviced her or gave her compassion and gave her a voice. I wasn't gonna. It was a great point. I wasn't.
It was a great point.
Yeah, I'd have to be very self-centered and egotistical to kind of for my retort to squash what she said and not take kind of any but we're living in this world of Twitter, social media. Like, everyone has a voice, and everyone can not in this case that we're talking about, but it's very easy to kind of hide behind an avatar.
Yeah.
Some people just want to provoke, and some people want to stir the pot. And I haven't got time for that, to be honest. And as I said, I'm very lucky that I'm not a victim of that.
And so you've obviously, with this program, done a lot more outside of, just nutrition and training. And I know that nutrition and training isn't everything in your life. What are some of the non-fitness or non-health books or people that have influenced you?
Oh God.
You had to know that one was coming.
Didn't. So non-health, non-fitness. Or
you might, or just, I might have got you wrong. You might just be all fitness all the time.
No, I mean, I think about it a lot. It does occupy my brain bandwidth a lot of the time. Yeah, I don't know. I admire people that do good, and that probably sounds very cliched. But I admire someone like Jamie Oliver. I think, he, from our perspective, maybe he's not exactly on the money in terms of the health message, but he's talking to the masses. And this is what we were just talking about that grassroots level.
Yeah.
He's talking about, hey guys, let's get back into the kitchen and cook up something yummy. Chances are that's going to be real food and veggies. And I think he's done a phenomenal thing for not just the UK, but all around the world in terms of encouraging people back in the kitchen. So I guess, I mean, that's not really a non-health related, but that's someone who I admire.
Yeah.
And I know I work with food and nutrition, but even if I didn't, even if I was a scaffolder, I would still have admiration for him because he's trying to do a good thing. He has a, I guess it comes down to, and there's probably many, many examples of this. He's got a voice. He's got an elevated platform, and he's using it for good. He's using it for the greater good. And that's admirable, He should be knighted.
Well, he may well be. I mean, I agree with you. I don't always agree with the message 100%, but I can't fault the guy for trying to change that food
landscape
system.
Yeah.
And particularly in the US, the thing that's required there is not for those millions of kids to get, packaged paleo school lunches. It's for them to not be fed as much processed crap. That's exactly what he's doing. So, yeah. I mean, it's great work.
Yeah, you've got to, at that point, you got to take the easy wins. Like there's and I talk about this quite a bit. You got to know where your entry point is, and you've got to know what to build your foundation on. So if your entry point is eating refined crap, lots of sugar, then your entry point needs to be the foundation, which is real food. There's no sense in walking into a health food store, grabbing some supplements and grabbing some superfoods. Like, that's the cherry on top. Yeah. Like, let's work on the foundation. The foundation has got to be real food. It's got to be cooking at home. It's got to be an abundance of above ground veggies. It's got to be all that kind of stuff. There's no sense in, you know, taking a spoonful of turmeric or, you know, biohacking and all that jazz. Like, that's for later down the track. Like, work on the foundations. Like, the foundations is what's going to set you up for success.
Exactly. So, Scotty, Recondition Me has launched now?
Yes. So we're live. That launched on Sunday. So we're live and kicking, which is very exciting. It's been as I said earlier, it's been a long time coming, but it comes with great relief that it's up and it's out.
Well, it's a great program, Scotty. So it's people can find that at recondition.me, right?
That's right.
Cool. All right, so everybody go and check out recondition.me. Have you got any other big things planned in the next little while, Scott, or is this your focus for the next little while?
Well, no, I do have a few things. So I've got another book coming out in December. So that'll be the cookbook companion to the one that was out in January. So that's the Keto Diet Cookbook.
Oh, excellent.
What else? I'm talking to... I probably should. No, I'm not going to say it.
Keep a few things close to your chest, mate.
Yeah, but needless to say, I work very hard to get a positive message around nutrition and exercise and health and well-being to as many people as possible. And so there's a few little things that, you know, if they come off, will sort of be servicing that kind of desire of mine. So yeah, I don't want to be too explicit about it. Just, I don't want to jinx myself.
No probs. In the meantime, we will change as many lives as we can through recondition.me. And we look forward to your next book coming out. If anyone hasn't checked out the Keto Diet book, go and check that out too. A really
for the forward.
Yeah, really, really handsome, intelligent guy wrote the foreword. So I think it's probably worth getting for that alone. You'll probably get that on the Kindle sample anyway.
Love it. Thanks, mate.
All right, Scotty. Great chatting to you, mate. I won't take up any more of your time, but we'll hopefully get you back on the cast soon and chat about a whole bunch of other things.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, buddy.